We're going to look at the individual reflective essay, which is 40% of your final module grade. It is a 2,000 word individual piece of work. It's the one thing that most people fail this module on. They either don't prepare, they try to rush it at the end, or they don't take time to think about what they need to do as part of reflection. So what you're going to do is you're going to produce a personal reflective essay that focuses on your own personal creative and problem solving skills that are demonstrated throughout the module. It's really important that you only talk about this module. I do not want to know about your journey through your MBA or what your studies are like or what your life has been. It is, you have created a YouTube presentation which has asked you to showcase your creativity, and you are now reflecting on that creativity that you showcased. So if you haven't been creative in the first part, it's always a challenge to do this in the second part. So what you're going to do is you are going to identify 3 key points in the module and use relevant tools or a relevant tool to analyze each of the events. So you're going to have 3 separate reflections based on 3 different things that you personally have done in the module. So one thing you might look at is a problem that you needed to identify and how you've used a creative tool to identify it. So if you've used the fishbone analysis or the 5 whys, that is a creative tool that you can reflect on, think about how you used it, what you've learned from it, all of those sorts of things. You also might want to creatively demonstrate a skill during your presentation. Therefore, that's something else that you can reflect on. And finally, you might have used a creative thinking technique, whether it be brainstorming or different lateral thinking or something like that. Again, another point that you can reflect on. As you can see, if you haven't taken active part in your presentation, it can be a real challenge to come up with this. You need to support everything that you talk about in this. You need to either write a reflective journal or a diary entry that highlights what you have done. So for every option that you've done, you must reflect, have a reflective journal. It is not enough for you just to say, I did this, this is how I felt. And then based on your reflection, you're going to identify any creative skills that you would develop further and create a PDP. It's really important that I reiterate that this is personal. You should not talk about the group. You shouldn't tell me what other people did or didn't do. This is all about what did you do on your own personal creative journey. The format for the essay is a cover page with your name and your banner ID on it, an introduction which is around 50 words, key learning points which should be about 1,500 words, so that's 500 words for each, your personal development plan based on those 3 events and what you're going to do differently in the future, your references, so again this is a master's module, so you should be looking for between 10 and 15 journal articles to support your work, and finally your appendices, in which you're going to have your evidence of your reflective journals. As you can see, because we require evidence, you should be conducting the reflective journals as soon as you start working on your presentation. The marking criteria, pretty straightforward. Your recording and reflecting must be a personal record. You must have 3 critical learning points that in relation to creative, problem solving and skill application. You also should be personalising what you want. You then should analyse your creativity and your innovation skills based on the group presentation and talk about your experience linked to theory. You must be very clear and writing it in a very structured way, using theory to support up what you're doing. And credit is given for careful and technically adept writing clear of errors. You must reference in a consistent style, ideally Harvard referencing. And you should focus on this, and that gets you 20 marks. In a little bit more detail, the guidance says the introduction should be very brief. You need to get everything across in 100 words. So that is, what was the company, what did you focus on, what did you do? Do not define creativity. Do not tell me what creativity is. Do not tell me where creativity comes from or anything like that. That straight away tells me that you've not read the assignment brief, because that is not a self-reflecting piece of work. You also then should move on to identify the 3 key learning points. And what you're doing is you're justifying your priorities on what you're working on. You should pick a relevant model, whether it be like the 4 R's of reflective thinking, Kolb or Gibbs reflective cycle. So each of those 3 points should be referenced within that academic approach. So you might have option 1 or point 1 where you've done something and you do a full cycle, and then you do point 2 and you would do a full cycle, and you do point 3 and a full cycle. You need to make sure that you use a reflective model to support your work. If you don't, it can limit your grade, and as I said, this is often the area that people fall down. So I'm suggesting that you should do creative problem solving. You should have a learning journal, and you should identify a problem that you've had, and then you should reflect on it. This should be just in your module, not your MBA journey, not your life or anything like that. I've given you some suggestions on techniques that you could use, so maybe you pick one of those in your creative methodology. The next thing, using a reflective model, you would then critically discuss each of the stages and also talk about what tool you used. Do not describe the tool. We already know the tool, we just need you to apply it. Once you've done your problem, you then look at your creative skill. Identify a creative skill that you've used. It should be a separate event to the previous one, and you should talk about how you've used it. Have you used creative thinking? Have you used innovative approaches? Have you used creative collaborative working? Does it things like convergent, divergent thinking, risk-taking, critical thinking, creative communication? And again, you must evidence this. It's not just a case of, I did this and this is what I learned. You should be reflecting on this throughout the module. Again, do not describe the tool, but use a reflective tool to reflect on your creative skill that you have demonstrated as part of this module. The third point in this is you need your creative idea development. Again, using a learning journal, identify a time when you used relevant techniques. That could be visual thinking, prototyping, ideation, storytelling, scenario modeling, or similar techniques. As you can see in the guidance, I've guided you towards models that might be suitable for you to use in each section. You only need to pick one, but you should understand which one you pick and why you're using it. Again, do not describe models, but you're going to use a reflective model to discuss how you used it. Out of those, you're then going to create a personal development plan. You're going to talk about, in each of those, how could you improve what you're doing. You should utilize a technique, ideally a SMART target. So for each one, you haven't got many words. So, for each area, you want to reflect on it and talk about how you're going to improve it in the future, ideally linking it to a SMART target. Back to references. If you think about each area, you should be having 3 or 4 references in at least each area. So you're looking between 15 and 20 references in total. In the appendices, you should include evidence from your learning journal or your diary in the appendices. There will be templates available on the business creativity module. You should be completing these and attaching them. The submission date is there and the word count is there. Remember, the word limit is 2,000 plus or minus 10%. If you're doing a lot less words, then you need to reflect on what you're missing from it. Your attention's drawn to university policy on plagiarism and collusion. This is an individual piece of work. Do not work with someone else on it. It is just for you to hand in. Also, make sure you understand the late submission approach and see how you can hand it in on time. It is your responsibility to know the deadlines and hand it in.